Ze is de enige nog levende legende van een legendarische generatie van violisten. Een gouden tijdperk van de viool. Denk aan Oistrakh en Heifetz en Milstein. Denk aan Christian Ferrat. Denk aan Ginette Neveu, Michael Rabin, Arthur Grumio. En de enige die nog in leven is een van mijn grote heldinnen. En ik vind het een ongelooflijk voorrecht om haar te spreken. Ida Haendel vanuit Florida, vanuit Miami. Miss Haendel, it's a joy to meet you in this high-tech way.
Well, it's a pleasure for me. You know, women always like to talk, and here's my opportunity.
I'm a great fan of yours, and well, let's start, for example, how do you develop your recognizable tone? Because of your generation, so many violinists have their own tone, their own coloring. In our day and age, it is very hard to discern one violinist from the other. But your tone and your whole characteristic of tone is so personal. How do you develop that? How do you find your own voice on the violin?
Well, my answer is as follows. I'm not particularly religious, but there are certain things that you are born with, and you cannot deceive anybody. I believe that when I began to play, you may not believe it, but it's really true. I was 3.5, and I announced to my mama, who was doing some cooking, and I said, I also had a violin because I had an older sister, a very beautiful, talented, intelligent sister. And I said to my mama, Mommy, I can play. And my mother answered, don't touch your sister's violin. We don't have money to buy another one. If you drop it, we can't buy another one for her. So I said, Mommy, but I can play. And she said, no, you cannot. You're only 3.5. But I said, but I can't play. I took the violin, and to cut the story short, I played.
So you were your own teacher?
Well, I improvised. Most of the time, you know, we were very poor, so we couldn't afford to have a radio or anything like that. But we had neighbors, and I heard some sounds from the distance. So especially what I loved very much, there were some, I don't know how many people understand German, but I'm going to say it in German because that's what they said. Zigeuner, gypsies who played, and I heard it from the distance, and I fell in love with that. So whatever I heard, I imitated. And then when a year went by and 2 years, and I played everything what I heard. I imitated. If I heard something on the radio or a recording, I took the violin and I played it. Whether it was Beethoven or Mozart or Schubert, I played.
But when you grew up and you became famous, you were, after Ginette Neveu passed away, she died in the accident, you were the only woman of a whole generation dominated by men.
I have to say something. I loved Ginette Neveu, but she looked very masculine. And when she played the instrument, it was also very masculine. So I don't know much about Ginette Neveu, except that we all admire her very much. And she was also a marvelous personality. Strong. When she gripped my hand to say hello, goodbye, I nearly fainted because I still have very small hands. I never grew up. So Ginette Neveu was tall and big and strong. Totally a different personality than I was and then.
So what is your secret that you conquered all these men in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, and they, in so many performances and recordings, you fly like a bird over the rest?
May I say something? You are very, very kind and generous to say that I conquered. And I am not so conceited to say that I conquered all the men. Maybe now I do, but in the past I'm not so sure that I conquered them. But You know, I'm not terribly religious, but I believe that there is a power that we don't know about. Maybe we call it the Lord, who actually is taking care of the whole universe. We don't know what makes us walk and speak and think and play. We don't know what the power is. But subconsciously, I knew that I can play. So I have a sister, a little bit older than I am, and she was given the violin. And one day my mommy was cooking something, and I said to her, Mommy, I can play. So she said, Don't touch your sister's violin. You will drop it, maybe. You are only 3.5, and then we have no money to buy to buy another one. I said, But I can play. And my mother said, No, you cannot. You are only 3.5. I said, But I can play. And I did. So maybe somebody can tell me what is that power that I knew I can play. And I keep telling everybody, I wrote my autobiography a long time ago. And I said, maybe there is another life that we don't know about and we don't remember. Maybe I did it already before I was born. You never know.
Do you recall the concerts that you gave in the Netherlands, in Holland?
Yes, I have to confess, I do recall the Netherlands because this was the first country that really invited me to perform professionally. And there was, I'm not going to mention, a very famous concert violinist, actually a wonderful artist. And when he heard how much I got paid in Holland, he nearly fainted. He said, I don't get that kind of a fee. And you, little girl, receives that fee in Holland. I was almost afraid to say yes, but they were very generous to me and they paid me a wonderful fee. And I had marvelous managers who cared for me. And they always called me not Ida, but like you say in German or Dutch, Idachen.
You know, um, I discovered this wonderful CD with you, or that was an LP at the time, with Raphael Kubelik in London. You recorded the Max Bruch and you recorded the Ludwig van Beethoven concertos. And then 2 years later, it must have been 1951, we found out, you traveled to Holland, July that year, to perform the Beethoven concerto with the Residentieorkest, the Hague Philharmonic, under Raphael Kubelik. So you were quite close to him, weren't you?
Yes. Well, I mean, I was a child, but I admired him because he was really one of the greatest conductors in my experience. And he was so kind, also very, very generous and patient and so on. But I was also very lucky because some interesting things happened to me in my career. From the beginning, whoever I played with, any conductor, whether it was from Holland or from England, they just followed my interpretation. Not one ever made the comment, oh, Ida, why do you phrase this way? Why do you play this way? Whether it was Otto Klemperer or Kubelik or some other great conductor, they always followed me as if I knew it all. And I can't believe it. Until this day, I don't understand not one criticism. Just however I played, they followed.
They were smart.
Thank you. That's a wonderful comment. But I'm going to be very, very honest. My greatest respect and admiration, of course, some of the performers, no doubt, but composers. The composers hardly get paid. They sit day and night on the chair with the score and compose, and without any payment almost. So it's a privilege to perform such compositions, and I love doing it. And I love to, I don't want to say not expose or invent, but discover music that I had not played before. That's a tremendous challenge to do right by a composition that I never played.
I have some questions about some of your famous colleagues at the time, because you also met George Enescu when you were young, didn't you? But he was a special fiddler, wasn't he?
My father always tried to get me to the greatest musicians. So I had the privilege to study with George Enescu, who was very, very, a little bit mysterious. And for me, there was a bit of a frustration. I admired him, I thought he was a real genius, but he never, ever demonstrated on the violin anything. He did not. He did not take the violin into his hands to show you how to interpret it. He left it to the player, to the soloist, whoever. And I did that.
So there again, you were your own teacher, just like the little girl, 3.5 years old.
When people, young people, are coming to me and say, "Oh, Ida Haendel, would you show us how to perform it?" So you know what my answer is? I always say, "You already have the greatest teacher." And their comment is, "Oh, you mean you?" And I said, "No, I don't mean me. I mean the score. Just be faithful to the score and do what is in it to the best of your ability, and you will reach it."
Who among all of your colleagues did you admire most?
Yes, Heifetz. He really was astonishing. The kind of the the way he dominated the instrument was amazing. Every note in its proper place and intonation. I have to say again, not many violinists have a perfect intonation. They play a little bit out of tune sometimes. Depends upon the talent, of course. Yasha was the one. Yasha Heifetz was amazing because every note was in its place. So I would say, as a virtuoso, was Yasha.
Well, in your generation, the tone of you differed from Christian Ferrat or from Michael Rabin or from Nathan Milstein.
So maybe there is a God who directs the sound. I'm coming back to the beginning. We don't know. I think that nobody taught me how to make a sound. It came naturally. I took the violin and I played. And a lot of people sort of suspected that I had done it before, and they accused of my poor parents, especially my father, that he took me to some teachers who made the sound for me. Was not true. I was born with it. Nobody ever, also, and I'm not bragging, but I never had anyone who said to me, correct the note because it's a little out of tune. So you are born with some gift that you are not aware of. But I did never played out of tune. It was what I heard, and that's what I transferred on the fiddle. You know, I always tell now when some people come to play to me, I say to them, do you listen to yourself? Do you know how you play? Are you in tune or not? This is top priority for you to find out your intonation, which is very difficult because you are doing it at the same time as you are listening to it. So what do we know what comes out in the distance? But I can tell the truth that no one, not Enesco, nor Flesch, nor Mikhailovich, not one teacher ever drew attention that I am playing out of tune. So you are born with a hearing, which is from God.
Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
It was really a joy.